We begin with new developments on Canadians trapped in Sudan amid deadly violence. Canada's Defence Minister has now confirmed the first civilian airlift coordinated by Canada has taken off. Minister Anita Anand spoke to reporters a short time ago.
I can confirm that a first Canadian evacuation flight from Sudan has taken place using an RCAF CC-130 Hercules aircraft. We will have more details to share soon. This is very good news, and I thank our Canadian Armed Forces personnel for their hard work to make this happen.
So we are tracking this story with our reporters on both sides of the Atlantic. Brett Ruskin is in Halifax and was there for the remarks from the Defence Minister. He has more on Canada's response, and in London we have the CBC's Abby Kuadasan, who is tracking the latest on the unrest in Sudan and a ceasefire set to end in hours, which could hamper further evacuations. But we do want to begin with the news from Minister Anand, and Brett Ruskin is in Halifax again. So Brett, we know that Canada's first airlift has made it out of Sudan. What other details did the minister reveal?
Yeah, Arthi, so just standing here outside where the announcement was made at the kind of end of the Halifax Stanfield Airport runway, and take a look at the planes behind me. These are Hercules aircraft, obviously not the Hercules that were used for this rescue, but this is the exact type of plane, of aircraft that was used to do this rescue that we just heard about within the past hour. So we do know that one flight did make it out of Sudan. We don't know many details beyond that in terms of the exact timing, the exact location that it went to, or the number of people who were on board that were taken to safety. But we did hear that this first flight has gone out with plans to have other flights as well. We know the basics and the context of what is happening there in the area from a high-level scope. We know 200 Canadian Armed Forces members are on scene, as well as at least two of these aircraft, the CC-130 Hercules aircraft from the Royal Canadian Air Force. So those are the assets that are on the ground and in the air in Sudan. And we know that one aircraft has taken off with at least some Canadians to be rescued. Arthi.
And then, Brett, we were listening into that press conference. We heard you ask the Defence Minister about future efforts to get Canadians out of Sudan and how it may become more difficult with a ceasefire set to end very soon, in fact. So what did Minister Anand say about that?
Sure. Well, yeah, we've been hearing that there would be no more flights, possibly from officials saying that by the end of this week there would be no more flights available to take off. So that seemed like a very strict deadline. And so what might happen next after that? So I was able to ask the minister what might happen. She mentioned that they could use land assets. They could send people onto ships as well to help rescue them. Here's more about what she had to say about what might happen next.
I want to stress that we are pursuing all options. The situation is extremely dangerous in Sudan. The power, the communication are intermittent, food and water shortages are widespread, and so it requires our Canadian Armed Forces planners to consider all options for evacuation other than by aircraft, although these may pose additional risks.
And so she stressed that this really is a minute-by-minute, real-time decision-making process to work with not only Canadian military planners, but also folks on the ground and allies of Canada as well, to again to try to help the people on the ground there in Sudan to reach safety. Arthi.
Thanks for the latest on this, Brett. That is the CBC's Brett Ruskin in Halifax. And now we want to check in with the CBC's Abby Kuadasan. She joins us live from London with more on this story. So, Abby, the ceasefire is meant to expire at midnight local time. It's late in the afternoon there right now. Is there any indication that it could be extended?
Arthi, right now the United States and some African nations are trying to make that happen, to have it extended. The Sudanese army says its commander, General Burhan, is willing to stretch it for another 72 hours. The military also says Kenya, South Sudan, and Djibouti are working on a proposal that includes talks with the paramilitary group RSF. But again, as of right now, the existing ceasefire expires at midnight. And just as Canada is trying to get its citizens out, so too are for other countries. The UK says it has already airlifted more than 500 people on 6 flights, and the British Foreign Secretary James Cleverly stressing that the clock is ticking.
Now is the time to move. We have the aircraft, we have the capacity, and we have a ceasefire which comes to an end tonight. So we are saying to people, if you want to have our support to fly out of Sudan, do so now.
Now, France and Germany have evacuated hundreds of people as well, including non-citizens. So some of the Canadians who've now left the country were on board European aircrafts. And the French Foreign Ministry says a ship has now arrived in Jeddah carrying people from 50 countries, including Canada. Chinese and Indian nationals, some have arrived in Saudi Arabia today as well. Saudi Arabia says it has rescued more than 2,500 people in its rescue missions. And Germany, Arthi, has wrapped up its rescue mission entirely.
So we know more about the foreign nationals who are trying to escape the violence there. What can you tell us about the Sudanese people who are trying to flee the violence?
Arthi, even before the violence broke out nearly 2 weeks ago, about 1/3 of the 46 million people in Sudan needed humanitarian aid. Now we know many people are trapped in their homes, as the minister just said, with very little food and little water, and there's limited access to the internet. And the World Health Organization says 60% of the health facilities in the capital, Khartoum, are closed. That's where much of the fighting in the capital has taken place. So some people are making the difficult decision to flee by road north to Egypt. We've seen thousands of people waiting at that border trying to cross into the country. They're also heading to Ethiopia, and the UN believes that Chad and South Sudan may see up to 270,000 refugees because of this crisis, this power struggle between the top 2 generals in Sudan, who are meant to shepherd in a transition towards civilian rule. And that great Sudanese hope, Arthi, one that people have waited 4 years for, in severe jeopardy as well.
Thank you for this, Abby. That is the CBC's Abby Kuadasan in London.